If you didn't see the horrors in Majora's Mask, we were not playing the same game, because it's clear from the opening scene itself. A boy rides alone through a forest that has no name on any map. Here he is, a boy with no name and no fame. A normal kid passing by a misty forest. This boy saved an entire kingdom from ruin. He pulled a sword from a pedestal that had waited centuries for the right hand, and he magically turned into a man, fought a demon king, and became a legend whispered across Hyrule. But none of that matters here today. Here, he is a child looking for his friend. Within the next 10 minutes, he's about to lose his face, his voice, and his body. Everything. This is the opening of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. It is perhaps the darkest opening in the franchise. To understand why this opening works, you have to understand what came right before it. Ocarina of Time, the game directly before this one, opens with warmth. A fairy wakes a sleeping boy in a treehouse, in a forest filled with kids that never age. Majora's Mask has none of that. There is only fog, silence, and a boy who has lost his sense of direction, literally and emotionally. Here, we have a little child looking for a friend in a dark forest. Already sounds like a childhood horror story. He's looking for one friend, Navi, who left without saying goodbye, maybe mourning his friend. That is the entire emotional core of this opening. Amidst this search, you spot the dead eyes looking at you. Skull Kid skips the fight and takes what makes Link feel like the hero. Epona, his horse, and his connection to Hyrule is stolen. The Ocarina of Time, the instrument that lets him bend time itself, is stolen too. It's a robbery, and what gets robbed is Link's identity as a hero. He is left with nothing, and nothing in this game is only the beginning. What happens next is where the game stops being unsettling and starts being genuinely disturbing. Skull Kid curses Link. The cutscene that follows has almost nothing in common with a typical Zelda cutscene. Link is chased through a warped, shifting void by a wave of faceless Deku Scrubs, featureless wooden creatures closing in from every direction with no clear way out. There is only being overwhelmed. The sequence ends on the face of a massive Deku tree looking down at him, its expression frozen somewhere between grief and agony. Here is the stranger part. Aonuma later connected this moment to a nightmare from development. He said that while working through the one-year development, he dreamed a Deku was chasing him and woke up screaming. The next day, cinematic director Takumi Kawagoe showed him a Deku movie that looked exactly like that dream. When Link comes out of the vision, he looks into a reflection, and what looks back at him is not his own face. He has been compressed into a small, frail, wooden Deku creature, a form so fragile that a single spark of fire can destroy it completely. And there is a darker layer underneath this, one that the game only reveals much later. The Deku mask that trapped Link inside this form was made by Skull Kid using the actual soul of a Deku child. When the opening seems ready to let the player breathe, the game introduces a salesman. The happy masked salesman's face snaps between two states with no transition between them. One frame, a wide, frozen, cheerful grin. The next frame, an expression of pure rage. Nothing in between. No natural shift a real face would make. The moment he turns intense, the background music cuts entirely. Total silence. You are left alone with him and nothing else to listen to but his voice. To him, Majora's Mask is first his stolen property, even though it can end the world. He sees it as his stolen property. He wants it back, and is willing to hold Link's humanity hostage until he gets it. That is the final piece of this opening. Within the first 10 minutes, Majora's Mask has taken away Link's horse, his instrument, his identity, and his body. But hold on, let's focus on his transformation. The transformation into a Deku Scrub is a curse that uses a trapped spirit. The spirit trapped inside that form belongs to the Deku butler's son, a child who had already died before this story even began. The hollow, lifeless tree Link stumbles into during his transformation is widely believed to be that same child's resting place, the exact spot where his spirit still lingered when Skull Kid reached in and pulled it out to build the curse around Link. Link has to recover the Ocarina of Time and learn a new song, the Song of Healing, a slow and mournful melody built for exactly this kind of grief. He carries that song to the happy masked salesman and plays it for him. What happens next is almost tender compared to everything before it. The melody pulls the Deku child's spirit out of Link's body and seals it safely into the mask itself. Link is freed. The spirit does not disappear. It stays close, worn, on his belt from that point forward, because now Link can put that form back on whenever he chooses, deliberately becoming the same lost child whose body he woke up trapped inside. We'll dive more into the horrific meanings of these transformations. They do have something much more sinister hiding behind them. Moving to the hub after this scary opening of the game will give you refuge from the crippling sadness of the game, but it won't last long. Step outside the clock tower, and Clocktown greets you with sunlit banners and a jaunty carnival march playing overhead. For a moment, it almost feels like the nightmare is over. Oh, it's not. Just look above, and then you'll understand why. Hanging directly over the town is a moon with a face, its bloodshot eyes, its jagged snarl, and an expression that looks like it's furious and getting closer. In most games, the sky stays in the background, but here, a part of the sky is falling. It's a threat. Everything below that moon is performing normalcy it does not feel. The townspeople look almost identical to the cheerful villages from Ocarina of Time. Same faces, same designs, but something underneath has curdled. They are anxious, short-tempered, worn down. Despite the moon slowly coming down, the town is still preparing for its annual Carnival of Time anyway. Banners going up, music playing. It's as if throwing a party can talk the apocalypse out of arriving on schedule. Inside the mayor's office, officials argue over whether the moon is even moving at all, too paralyzed by politics and denial to do anything useful with the time they have left. It plays like a party being planned inside a building that is already on fire. When the second day hits, a harsh metallic clank cuts through everything. A black screen states it plainly. Dawn, the second day. 48 hours remain. The music notices the time passing before the characters do. The same cheerful town theme from day one returns, but stretched thinner. Tempo rushed faster, minor chords bleeding into melody that used to sound safe. By the third day, it sounds like a music box that has been wound too tight and is starting to come apart. The game loops the same 3 days over and over and gives you something most stories never let you witness this closely: the chance to watch specific people fall apart in real time at their own pace, following their own private version of this ending. Anju, a young woman working at the town's inn, spends her days waiting for her fiancé, Cafe, who vanished under strange circumstances. On the second day, if you find her, she's no longer waiting. She sits still, holding a wedding dress she now understands she will never wear, having accepted that he's not coming back before the world ends anyway. If you don't intervene, Anju spends the final hours waiting in an empty inn, holding a wedding dress, completely resigned to dying alone. Now, whatever composure the town had left was gone. Dawn of the final day arrives with 24 hours remaining, and the music has stopped pretending to be a carnival tune at all. It is a frantic, now pitch-bent and distorted, closer to a warning siren. The sky itself turns a sick, bruised red. People stop performing routines and run, and the streets that were full of shopkeepers and children a day earlier emptied out completely. Small character moments hit hardest here because the game spent 2 days building them up specifically to tear them down. On day one, the town's swordsman brags to anyone who will listen that he personally will cut the falling moon clean in half. Go looking for him on the final night, and that bravado is turned into pure cowardice. He is curled up on the floor of a back room, sobbing, admitting he does not want to die. Out at the ranch on the edge of town, an older sister named Cremia hands her much younger sister a cup of Chateau Romani, a rare drink normally kept for adults only, which is implied to be alcohol, and she is probably giving it to her little sister specifically so the alcohol will put her to sleep before the end comes, so that whatever happens next, she will not be awake to feel it. With 5 minutes left on the clock, the music cut out completely. What replaces it is a low earthquake rumble underneath a frantic thumping heartbeat, as if the game itself is panicking along with you. And then Clocktown's own centerpiece, a clock tower that has stood over the town this entire time, splits open like a trapdoor built for exactly this moment, exposing a direct path straight up to the thing causing all of it. The building that held this town together turns out to have been built from the very beginning as a stage for its own execution. That 3-day loop is at the core of the game, and once you understand it, the rest of the game starts to look very different, because that same song of time that resets the clock and rewinds those 3 days to the start is also the tool the game hands you to go looking for a way out. Every region beyond Clocktown, the swamp, the mountain, the bay, the canyon runs its own version of this exact countdown, its own community breaking under its own disaster, waiting for someone to notice in time. The 3-day loop also drives everything you do outside Clocktown, because the deeper you go into Tamina, the more you realize the game has been preparing you for even harder to sit with than a countdown. In most games, when your character transforms, it is a costume, a new set of stats, a new silhouette, nothing more. Each main transformation mask carries a dead person's spirit or memories, and Link has to put that grief on his own face. When he transforms, he takes that grief into his own body. He's taken on a form built from a dead person's memories and spirit, not a costume he can separate from grief. Every mask comes with a full backstory, spoken directly by the NPCs involved, naming exactly whose spirit it carries. Take the Goron mask. This one carries the weight of Darmani, a Goron warrior who died trying to save his village from a blizzard that was slowly starving them out. Before Link ever wears this mask, he meets Darmani's ghost directly, standing over his own grave. Darmani does not fully understand he is dead yet, and when the realization sets in, his grief is immediate and visible. Only after witnessing that does Link take on his body, meaning every scene afterward where Link fights as a Goron is a dead warrior's body being worn by a living boy, with that warrior's unfinished mission still hanging over both of them. The Zora mask carries a similar weight, though it arrives differently. This mask holds Mikau, a Zora guitarist who was murdered by pirates while trying to recover stolen eggs belonging to his bandmate. Link does not meet Mikau as a ghost first. He finds him still alive, barely washed up on the shore, dying in real time in front of him. With his last breaths, Mikau asks Link to finish what he started. Once he dies, his body becomes Link's mask. So every time Link swims as a Zora afterward, he is completing a dead musician's final request using the very body that musician lost doing it. If Clocktown was a slow countdown and the masks were personal tragedies, Ikana is something else entirely. It's a whole kingdom that killed itself. The first stop most players make here is the graveyard, and the first thing you notice is Dumpe. In Ocarina of Time, Dumpe was an odd but harmless gravekeeper, mostly comic relief. His counterpart here is a different person entirely, someone who is openly, visibly terrified of the place he's standing in. He explains that every grave surrounding him belongs to the soldiers and family of Ikana's royal line, meaning this graveyard is the kingdom's remains. At the very back of the graveyard sleeps, much bigger than a normal grave marker, a giant skeleton belonging to Captain Kita, once the commander of Ikana's entire army. Wake him with the right song and defeat him. And he fights, by the way, because no one ever told him that the war had ended. Once he understands it's over, his only request is that Link carry the message forward to the soldiers still wandering the canyon under his old command. His spirit lives on inside his hat, which is why the skeleton soldiers scattered across Ikana recognize Link the moment he wears it. That idea, soldiers who keep fighting a war that ended centuries ago, it shows up again with the Garo. They were spies sent in from a rival nation to gather intelligence on Ikana's military, and their loyalty to that mission didn't end when they died. It got worse. Their code demands they leave nothing behind for an enemy to study, which means when Link defeats one while wearing the Garo mask, it detonates, destroying its own body on the spot so no secret can be pulled from the remains. That right there is a form of contingency in the form of suicide. Deeper into the canyon, in a locked stone chamber, you meet the spirit of a composer named Flat, and he tells you something that still catches players off guard. His brother, Sharp, he says, sold his soul to the devil. The word used in the original Japanese is closer to a general term for a demon or evil spirit rather than the literal reference to hell, but the implication underneath it is clear either way. The entity Sharp made his pact with was Skull Kid, using the corrupting power of Majora's Mask, reaching into an old grudge Sharp still carried against Ikana's historical enemies and twisting it into something poisonous enough to curse the canyon's entire water supply. Normally, the Song of Healing is the tool this game gives you to release a suffering spirit. Here, it doesn't work. Sharp is consumed by hatred, and hatred doesn't respond to a song built for sorrow. What finally breaks the curse is the Song of Storms instead, a melody built from pure, uncontrolled fury, composed by Flat himself, strong enough to overpower his own brother's corruption and let the river run clean again. On the edge of the canyon sits the Music Box House, home to a young girl named Pamela and her father, and their story is quieter, but no less unsettling. Her father was a researcher, driven by pure academic obsession into the cursed Great Well beneath the canyon, and the curse down there changed him slowly, one stage at a time, human giving way to the shambling undead state of a Gibdo, his own daughter watching it happen in pieces. And this is where the game does something almost darkly funny in the middle of all this grief. If Link wears the captain's hat, the Garo mask, or the Gibdo mask, the flesh-hungry Redeads scattered around the canyon stop attacking entirely and break into a synchronized dance instead. It sounds like a joke until you find the explanation hidden in a gossip stone nearby. These creatures were once the castle's own dancing troupe, and somewhere underneath the hunger and the rot, muscle memory still outranks bloodlust the instant they see a uniform or a mask they used to perform for. All of it traces back to one figure, sitting at the heart of the ancient castle of Ikana. King Ego-Stu Ikana has ruled over centuries of madness, and defeating him finally lets him see clearly enough to explain what's happened to his kingdom. He describes it as smaller and slower. Years of petty quarrels left to fester, and comrades stopping the habit of forgiving each other's failures. Somewhere in that slow erosion, he says, those feelings disappeared from their hearts entirely. That collapse gave Majora's Mask an opening. When Stone Tower Temple was breached, a wave of dark wind poured out over the kingdom, and it amplified what was already sitting there, waiting until a nation turned on itself completely, killed its own people, and rose back up as the hollow, wandering dead, now haunting the very canyon that used to be their home. Ikana explains what Termina's rot looks like when it's had centuries to spread. The final hours of the story are the climax and the final culmination of all the anxiety. By the time Link reaches the top of the clock tower on the final day, he has crossed loop after loop of the same 3 days and earned the trust of 4 sleeping giants across Termina's 4 regions. Calling all of them at once through the Oath to Order is what finally stops the moon in its tracks. Skull Kid briefly seems to come back to himself. Tatel is reunited with her brother Tail, and for a moment it feels like it's all over. But that isn't it, because Skull Kid suddenly lifts into the air, then collapses to the ground completely. And what happens next reveals what the game has been hiding since the opening cutscene. Majora's Mask has been controlling Skull Kid the entire time. Free of Skull Kid now, the mask flies directly into the moon's mouth and uses its own power to force the moon's descent, straining even the combined strength of all 4 giants. Link and Tatel are left with only one option: go inside the moon itself and end this at the source. What's waiting inside is unsettling, specifically because of how peaceful it looks. There are no monsters or traps, just a sunlit field and 5 children standing in it, each wearing a mask. 4 of the masks match the bosses Link has already defeated in each region. The 5th child wears Majora's Mask itself. Look underneath any of these masks in the original release, and there's nothing there. No face was ever modeled for them, because they were never meant to be looked at directly. Speaking with the child wearing Majora's Mask finally forces the confrontation this entire game has been building toward, and the fight makes clear this was never really an inanimate object to begin with. In its first form, the mask grows wet, fleshy tendrils and begins moving the spines along the sides on its own, shedding any pretense of being an object at all. Its second form adds speed and grotesque limb growth, paired with a frantic, unraveling soundtrack that seems to match Skull Kid's own erratic energy more closely, as if some piece of his personality bled into the mask during all those years it wore him instead of the other way around. Its final form is the one built purely to disturb. A second face tears open from the top of the mask entirely, filled with jagged teeth, an extra eye, and horns, discarding the last trace of anything the game has shown you before this point. There is a way to make this final fight considerably easier. Speak to the other children waiting inside the moon, and you can hand over every mask collected across all of Termina, each one representing someone Link helped, healed, or said goodbye to along the way. Combine every single one and you're given the Fierce Deity's mask, transforming Link into an older, vastly more powerful version of himself. Every other transformation mask in this game is tied to one dead person's spirit. Series producer Aonuma has said in past interviews that this particular mask works differently, closer to a combined echo of every single person across Termina rather than one individual soul. That's why obtaining it requires every mask in the game rather than one. It's proof of everyone he chose to help along the way, condensed into a single overwhelming form. Wearing it turns the final fight against Majora into something almost anticlimactic by comparison. That's how the game ends. Buried earlier in the game is a smaller, quieter version of this same loss. Skull Kid, we learn, was once a close friend of the four giants, the same ones that Link ends up rescuing. When they eventually had to leave and enter their long dormancy, Skull Kid was left alone, and that loneliness turned into the resentment that made him vulnerable to Majora's Mask in the first place. In the ending, the giant returned briefly to tell him, before going back to sleep, that the friendship never ended because they were apart. Majora's Mask only makes sense once you understand what came before it. The boy in that opening cutscene, the one who lost his horse, his ocarina, and his own face in the first 10 minutes, was already a hero before any of this happened. To understand why that matters, watch the video on the horrors of Ocarina of Time next.